It's a coup to own a house like that. It's legacy. It's a legacy home that you will have in your family, hopefully for as long as Marylou did.
I hope it's somebody that I know so I get invited inside.
Me too. Me too. Yes.
I hope that somebody buys it and preserves it.
Unlocking Saratoga's real estate secrets. Welcome to Selling Saratoga, a podcast about the real Saratoga real estate scene in one of the Northeast's hottest and fastest growing markets. Our listeners are going to gain expert insight on the best ways to make decisions about home improvement, investment, design, buying, selling, and everything in between.
I'm Helen Mastrion.
And I'm Noel McLaren. Together, Helen and I have the keys to your future in Saratoga real estate. On today's episode of Selling Saratoga, we are going to talk about market trends, real estate horror stories. But first, we are talking to the Saratoga Springs Preservation Foundation. Executive Director Samantha Bosshart is here with us. She's going to talk to us a bit about how our area's historic homes set us apart from other areas. She's also going to talk about the Preservation Foundation's latest and greatest projects. And we're going to talk a bit about Cady Hill, that is the Whitney mansion, which is currently on the market. So, let's get started. Let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining us, Samantha.
Thank you so much for having me.
I mean, it's health, history, horses, and you are that history leg of that conversation. Right. There's a lot of historic homes here in our area, specifically in Saratoga.
It really sets us apart from other areas in upstate New York.
You know, there's a lot of small upstate communities. You can see the potential. You can see like the beauty and the ornate styles of some of these historic homes, but they're not always preserved very well. You could see them starting to crumble. Why have we done that better than a lot of other upstate New York communities?
I think we were really fortunate, and when Saratoga Springs saw an economic decline in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and there were threats to our cities, such as a threat of building a bypass through our oldest historic neighborhood, or building a civic arena in Congress Park, or even urban renewal. All of those sort of made people aware of the value of preserving our history and our architecture, and those threats really emboldened some citizens to make preservation a key ethic of our community and part of its revitalization.
There was going to be a civic center in Congress Park?
Oh, yes, that was at one time planned.
Wow. How long have you been with the foundation?
I have been there 16 years.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Our mission is to preserve and enhance the architectural and cultural landscaped heritage of Saratoga Springs. We do that through advocacy, providing technical assistance to property owners, educational programs like our summer strolls that we do every Sunday through the summer, and restoration projects.
And you're a nonprofit, right?
We are a nonprofit membership-based organization. Membership starts at $35 a membership, and has various levels and benefits up through more than $1,000. However, it's anybody who values our historic neighborhoods in downtown.
So when actually was the Preservation Foundation founded?
It was founded in 1977.
Wow.
So we are actually one of the earlier preservation organizations. And so 1977, we're nearing our 50th anniversary, which is pretty exciting.
Are you going to do anything special for that?
Yes, but I haven't started planning. You'll
Okay. So stay tuned.
You can
Maybe
come back.
You'll have to come back to our podcast to discuss about that, because that's a really big deal. And again, the fact that the Preservation Foundation has been a model for the rest for other areas. This is a real estate and home design podcast. So I have to ask the question, why is the Preservation Foundation critical to buying and selling in our area?
There's challenges, though.
Oh, and there's
That's
challenges
what we,
too. There's
some
both
people
ends.
don't understand the importance of the Preservation Foundation if you're buying in a historical district until it's too late.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a big question to unpack. So one of the things that I think people don't realize is that being in a historic district requires that if you want to make exterior changes, build have new construction or demolish something, that there is a city review process called the design, where your projects must be reviewed by the design review board. They have a series of standards and guidelines that they follow that are actually based on the federal and state guidelines. So they're not arbitrary, but people feel that way at sometimes, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, these local districts, not only are they helping to ensure that our buildings are preserved, but they're actually protecting a homeowner or a property owner's investment in their own property.
Right.
True.
Almost protecting them from a neighbor doing something that would negatively impact their property. So I think oftentimes it's always how it impacts what a property owner can or can't do, but I think sometimes it would be helpful if people realize that you bought your home in this neighborhood in part, I assume,
For a reason.
Right.
because of the way it looks,
Right,
its
right.
feeling, its character, its charm, and that in order to keep that, you have some oversight. But ultimately, it also protects their investment, and then. There can be some benefits. New York State has a New York homeowners tax credit that can help offset costs associated with projects.
Right.
So
right.
in 2018, we did an economic impact study that looked at 20 years of real estate sales and the properties that are in a local historic district or are listed in a National Register district, which that's slightly different, but they have a higher value.
Wow.
Regardless of condition, square foot, or style. They generally have higher owner occupancy, at least in 2018. I don't know if the Airbnb has impacted that somewhat.
It's amazing how that's impacted historic homes as
Can
well.
you share
yeah.
that study? That's
Yeah, it's on
fascinating.
our website.
That's fascinating.
Where can
Okay.
people find that if they want to see that?
SaratogaPreservation.org, and it's right on our
Nice.
homepage. And it's
really cool.
it's a really well done, easy to read. We made it a report that the public could read. It's not
Right,
right.
right.
User friendly.
Can you define the historic district? Because that's the confusing
that's a
part.
good
What
question.
What is it?
Well, there's technically several, quote, historic districts, and those historic districts are reviewed through the Design Review Board. But then there's also what is called an architectural review district, which also has review by the Design Review Board. And then, to make it even more complicated, there are historic districts that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places, which is largely an honorary designation.
Okay.
Those sort of overlap with our local historic districts. Unfortunately, the boundaries of those districts are not easy to share. But there is a map on the City of Saratoga Springs website that will let you know if a house is in a historic district or in an architectural review district.
Well, and can you have a historic home not in a historic district?
Absolutely. We have a lot of homes that aren't in a historic district
Right.
and have no oversight. Technically, in preservation, a building 50 years or older can be considered historic.
And do you
Wow.
intervene in those homes that are not in a district, or does it have to be in a historic district? Like if
Rarely.
there's okay.
Rarely do we.
Okay.
So how does it exactly work, though? Like, are you walking around town and you say, "Oh my God, those windows don't look historic to me"?
Yeah, who
How does
keeps-
it work? That's an exaggeration, but how does that exactly work?
I think one of the biggest unfortunate things that happens to people who are new to Saratoga or maybe not familiar with it, sometimes they don't do their due diligence to realize whether or not their property is in a historic district or an architectural review district, and they don't know what that means. So like I said earlier, any exterior alteration, any new construction or demolition has oversight by the City of Saratoga Springs Design Review Board.
People are shocked by that if they buy a historic home?
A lot of people don't realize that.
Well, or they might not. For example, perhaps changing out a window might not, in somebody's mind,
True.
think that they need
The
to
first
have
thing.
approval, but that is something that.
But that
needs
is
to be done.
something. You're making anything that would change the exterior of your home. And some people think, oh, well, I had a wood window and I'm putting in an aluminum clad window. Sometimes that can be approved, But there is a process, and you have to have that approved.
So if a historic home goes up for sale, whose responsibility is it to inform the buyer? Is it the seller's responsibility? Is it the realtor's responsibility? Do you guys step in as a foundation and say, hey, we see that you're purchasing a home. These are the guidelines for how to do things in your historic home?
Ideally, it would be both the seller and the realtor, as well as the property owner doing their own diligence before purchasing a property. The foundation, we're planning to do a mailing in partnership with the city. We've done it before COVID, but it's taken us a little time to do this. But we will be sending out a brochure, Wait Before You Renovate brochure, to all the property owners.
Nice.
But
Great idea.
So that brochure is on our website as well as the City of Saratoga Springs website. The brochure is also on the City of Saratoga Springs website, which is saratoga-springs.org. But it kind of lets you know that some of the do's and don'ts in a very easy format, lets you know where you can get more information. But that's our effort to do community outreach. The foundation has a full-time staff of 3.5. So we can't do everything.
Can't be everywhere,
but
yeah.
we do try to let people know that we're here as a resource and we're here to help. And often people who are doing their due diligence will come across our organization's name and will contact me and ask questions, or a realtor will ask some questions. But so ideally it would be everybody.
Is there some kind of, let's say somebody replaces a window and puts in the wrong window, is there is there a fine? Is there some kind of?
There is a process through the City of Saratoga Springs. I can't speak to the details of that, but there is a process. And
who manages that? Who polices that?
I believe it's code enforcement. For us, there's a lot of confusion between us and the city.
Let's talk about some recently completed projects. I know that there was one right near Phila Street, or on Phila Street, that you're very proud of.
We're wrapping up. It's very exciting. In 2021, a house that had been, well, actually 2 houses that had been on our endangered list since 1998, we were able to acquire one of them. And the foundation has raised funds and done environmental abatement, structural stabilization, and nearly completed an exterior restoration of 65 Phila Street. This house was long neglected and was threatened with demolition, and we advocated for its preservation, and we were fortunate enough to be able to acquire the property. And the one adjacent to it that was also owned by the same property owner who had been, and that house had also been on our endangered list since 1998, was also at about nearly the same time acquired by a young couple who has invested significantly into it, and they are looking forward to making it their new home.
That's so nice. Wonderful.
And so
That's nice.
2 houses that were creating blight on the neighborhood have been restored, and
now they're probably some of the nicest there.
Yeah, we're really happy
Redone.
about it. I mean, I think people don't realize sometimes what these houses, if you saw the before and after, you'd think, why would they save that? But that building was built both of the buildings were built in 1851. One was built by Alexander A. Patterson. He was an architect. He was a builder. He owned a spring bathhouse, and it was where the Phila Street parking garage was. It was a massive building. And it also then later became a Jewish boarding house. And so
wow,
if we had lost that house, we could have lost that history.
Right.
And so saving some buildings that may not, at first glance, they aren't like a Grand Mansion of Union or North Broadway, these smaller structures still tell important stories. So we're really happy about that. And by the investment we're making, have improved the value of it. And it's going to contribute to the tax rolls and help and that helps our infrastructure. It helps our schools. It helps our police and fire department.
It's a ripple effect.
It's a ripple effect that not everybody sort of realizes the full impact of something like this building that we've taken on does, or the lovely couple next door who've done the same. What's exciting about this project is any net proceeds that we make from the sale of this property will be earmarked for a future community project. So this isn't
huge.
This is not money that will go back into our operations. That's why you need to be a member or come to our events.
Right.
But this is a project that we will earmark. The funds from this project will be earmarked and go to another community project that will benefit the community.
Paying it forward.
It pays it forward. So everybody who invested, it's not just investing in this one building. They're investing in a future project.
Let's talk about some of the projects that the foundation is working on right now that are downtown, because yes, we tend to think on this show in particular about the homes that are historic, but it's about downtown building facades as well. So what are we working on downtown right now?
Well, we aren't per se working on anything, but there are projects that keep coming forward. For example, the new addition to the Adelphi behind the Rip Van Dam. I mean, a large building of a site that had been vacant, and how was it redeveloped? So like a project like that, we often look at the mass and scale of that project and the scale and its fenestration, meaning how are the windows and doors placed, and how does that relate to the rest of downtown? I know that there's a proposal to put additional stories on top of Cooperstown Distillery. There is a proposal to redevelop the parking lot between the Collimer building and the Algonquin building. So those are the things that we often will review and provide our advisory comments on.
Do home buyers or owners ever come to you and ask you for people who are trained in renovating and restoring for specific contractors and whatnot?
We get that call a lot. Unfortunately, we can't provide recommendations. Even on a bigger level, the tradespeople to do this work, we are very limited. And that's actually a national preservation issue. We don't have the craftsmen or the craftspeople, I should say, and tradespeople to do a lot of the work that is needed to maintain these homes. And so there is an effort to develop workforce development in these trades, because that is a real need in our community. But finding contractors is challenging. I mean, we had to wait a year before we could get our project started because there was so much demand after COVID for contractors. We also had to wait.
So how does that work? 65 Violet is going to be a listing on the market?
Yes.
Wow.
What's next for it?
That's great.
We are going to put it on the market, and we hope that somebody will buy it and make it their home. The interior is gutted. We wanted whoever purchased the property to make it their own on the inside. So to decide their floor plan, decide what finishes they want. So
Right.
it is
It's a blank slate.
It's a blank canvas.
Okay, so it's an exterior.
Yes.
Okay.
It's really an opportunity to make a downtown home within 2 blocks of our bustling Broadway.
I don't think you'll have any problem.
Are you going to be the listing agent?
I would like to be, but we'll talk later.
Have you ever listed a home in the historic district, Helen?
That's a good question. I think I have.
I think you have.
I have. Lake Avenue. Yes.
Is that fun for you?
Honestly, it doesn't make a big difference.
Okay.
It's funny. As a realtor, I have not had a huge experience with the Preservation Foundation because I haven't had any clients who have had big issues with it.
Well, that's good.
Just learning all of this stuff is kind of fascinating, and
Yeah.
thinking that I've been in the business for 9 years and I'm woefully undereducated about the wonderful things that you guys
You're a
have
realtor.
done.
Listen up, then.
There you go.
And periodically, we haven't done it in a couple of years, but periodically we do realtor education series.
Oh, that's good to know.
I would love to help you with that.
Yeah. So and we touch on the economic impact of preservation. We talk on architectural styles. We talk about the review process, and we talk about what tax incentives there are. So again, we're here to be a resource. We're here to be a help, and I hope more realtors will approach us and
get involved,
learn more, and be involved.
I think that's a great idea for a little gathering of realtors. Realtors come on, get trained and get their licenses, and there's no, it's like, I'll say doctors who don't have nutrition experience because they don't teach it in colleges,
right?
Believe it or not. But realtors come on who are new, and we don't have any of that kind of amazing background.
So hopefully there'll be that connection now.
Yeah, let's do something.
Very exciting. Stay tuned, everyone. I will say there are a lot of people from at least my generation, I'm a millennial, that they're very intrigued by the history and the stories of a home, and its past lives and who may have lived there and what was its purpose in the community. Right. But maybe we don't really know what to do with that. So getting connected with the foundation might be a really good start.
Well, and I think the squeaky wheel, or the people who have had negative experiences or complain, that's the stuff that you hear, but we don't hear the good stuff. That's what we're here for.
It's true.
This is great stuff.
One thing I guess I probably should clarify, a lot of people see those plaques.
Oh, yeah.
We do a historic building plaque program, and a lot of people see those plaques and assume that because it has a plaque, it has special restrictions. And that's not the case. The plaque is purely for educational purposes. It's to allow the public know when the house was built and who built it. So
I could have one on my new build.
A building that's 50 years or older.
Okay.
Wow. Is that only available in Saratoga Springs?
Yes.
Like not Little Wilton or Little Greenfield?
No, I'm afraid our
50-year houses.
And it's a volunteer. If we had more staff and resources, but all the research is done by volunteers.
So I think a lot of people are going to hear that we have Saratoga Preservation Foundation on our show. We think of history when it comes to real estate in our community. And a property that comes to mind is that Whitney property, Cady Hill. It is now on the market. So give us the goods. I mean, what do we know about this very special property?
Well, it's a beautiful property that's set back, obviously, behind the gates. It was built as a stagecoach stop in 1774. Apparently has 21 rooms, or it did at that time. The Whitney family bought it at the turn of the century, but not this most recent.
This one.
Right.
Recent one. And it has several buildings on the property, including an indoor pool, some other homes, and a chapel. And obviously it was the site of many elegant parties by Marylou over the years.
It's like, I mean, when you think of it, there's a race named after Marylou Whitney. I mean,
she's royalty.
She is Saratoga royalty. As the Preservation Foundation director, what do you hope happens with the property?
Well, I hope that somebody buys it and preserves it, and it's not a site of redevelopment. At the end of the day, this property does not have any restrictions on new construction.
It's not in the historic district.
That's tricky for you. Does that make you a little nervous?
Of course it does. Yeah, I mean, whether or not the city council would entertain it being a city landmark is something to be considered going forward. But at this point, a lot of properties that we would like to see preserved are preserved because the right person purchases them and not necessarily need to designate it. And that's what we're hoping here in this case. But at the end of the day, I would consider Cady Hill a significant landmark to our city based on the contributions of Marylou Whitney and her role in our community.
Well, and as a realtor, you got to know that. And I can't imagine the family would want it any other way. I mean,
I'm sure that there's some guidelines for Julie & Co. who are selling it, representing Marylou's husband, Mr. Hendrickson.
From a realtor's perspective, I mean, who would you be selling that home to?
I don't have any buyers in that price range right now.
No, I know, but from your expertise, I mean.
It would be a person of means who obviously have a tie to the community, who is interested in an estate of that nature, because not everybody wants to own something that big. But there's plenty of people who do.
And that's a good point, too, someone with ties to the community as well.
Yes, usually it would be somebody who has Saratoga in their heart, who wants to have a presence here, who wants to be here, even if it isn't full time.
Someone who's proud to say, I have Cady Hill. It's my
I was going to
place.
say somebody who respects and wants to respect and continue to be a steward of the history of that home.
It's a coup to own a house like that. It's legacy. It's a legacy home that you will have in your family, hopefully for as long as Marylou did.
I hope it's somebody that I know so I get invited inside.
Me too. Yes.
All right. Time now for our Sellin' with Helen market update. Helen, tell us what is going on in the real estate world.
Yes.
And, this market right
The
now.
good news is the cycle is that people want to be in after their kids are done with school. So they enjoy the summer, be settled in for September. I just listed a house, and it's the perfect time. The normal time to close is 45 to 60 days. It is May, all of June. You're in for the summer. I have clients who have sold and were waiting. They sold their house back in February, but they're waiting till the end of June to move. So, but something about spring and the grass is green and the sun is shining makes people want to, they've been planning their change, whether it's upsizing, downsizing, right-sizing, and I'm seeing more listings coming on, which is great.
Oh, that's really promising because your last market update was quite the opposite. It was that there's a lot of people that
Exactly.
there's a
Have
lot of
been
people that want homes,
waiting.
but
Exactly.
nothing available. Okay,
Exactly.
so for those people waiting, there's incoming.
Don't lose hope. There's always something. It will happen. You just have to be diligent, and you have to get out there, and you have to be in line first. Put your feelers out. Absolutely. You have to be first, get out there. Don't give up hope. You have to manifest it. Something will happen.
All right, now we're going to transition to our real estate horror stories. That is a segment where we talk about some like silly, quirky, goofy, funny, interesting, sometimes horrific, but often not, things that happen with homes and buying and selling and design, etc. in Saratoga and the surrounding communities. I mean, give me a good haunted house story. Do you have one? You said, do you have a haunted house story?
Not.
Well, I don't have a haunted story, but I have had people tell me that their houses are haunted, but I personally have not experienced that.
What's your personal horror story then?
Well, it's really not my personal, but it was one associated with 65 Philo Street. So early on when we purchased the property, we had a volunteer. There was a stone that was half buried in the backyard, and he decided to uncover it. And as he uncovered it, the name Alexander A. Patterson was engraved in this large, big stone. And there was a moment of panic that Mr. Patterson, who had built the house, was buried on the site.
Ooh, so that's a little haunted. Not really. Spooky.
I was a little but thankfully there's a website called Find a Grave. And on that website, we could see that he was buried in Greenridge Cemetery off of Lincoln Avenue. He had a large memorial. We reached out to LeBrake Memorials, who's been doing memorials in the city of Saratoga Springs for over 100 years, and asked them about the stone. And he said that often, before a large monumental stone was built, there would be a temporary gravestone placed in the cemetery. And then when that new monument was done, they would give back the small temporary stone, and they would be used as property markers.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Because they're not cheap.
It was at the back corner along the property line is where we found this marker. So, that was a little bit of a...
No graves on the property.
No graves.
But did
yes.
people used to bury family members or people on the property?
Typically, not to my knowledge, no. There were burial grounds throughout the city.
But it did pause.
It was a certain pause, anything's possible.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your real estate horror story. And if you happen to have one, something quirky, weird, funny, scary that has happened in your process of buying, selling, designing, just doing anything with your home, be sure to share it with us. We can put them on anonymously on our show. We want to eventually have the goal of having your contribution. So we're featuring listeners' stories. Just email your horror story to sellingsaratoga@gmail.com. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. It's really been exciting. Can you come back, please?
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a treat, and anytime I can share about all the good things of preservation.
Well, you let us know too. There's endless topics I feel like we could talk about in this historic community. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, and be sure to tune in for our next episode every other Wednesday, anywhere you can listen to podcasts, which is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and then we post a lot to our Instagram and on Facebook. You can also watch this episode on YouTube, so a lot of really cool visuals that Samantha has brought in from the foundation. If you listen to us and want to see them, be sure to go to our YouTube channel too. If you want to be a guest on our show, a sponsor, have a real estate horror story to share again, be sure to email that to sellingsaratoga@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.